Ilia, after the fight, he called in Paddy Pimblett and brought him into the cage, and they had a face-off. Obviously, they've got a long history together. I know there's a lot of options on the table for Ilia, but when he shows that type of interest in a fight, does that make you want to make it?
Well, I don't know who the hell let him in there. That should have never happened. Let's start there. That's not the fight. It's just, yeah.
It was fun to watch.
It shouldn't happen.
It was fun to watch.
Well, that's not really what we do. Give a shit if it was fun to watch or not. It's just that shouldn't happen. Plus, he wins a second title in a higher division. It was a bad call by whoever the hell let him in there.
Alright, so Ilia Topuria just utterly destroyed Charles Oliveira in the very first round and is now officially on the short list of 2 division champions throughout UFC history. It's pretty incredible what this guy has been able to do in the few short years that he's been in the UFC. I mean, he hasn't even fought 10 fights in the promotion, and yet he's already on the fast track for becoming one of the greatest to ever do it. We have never seen Oliveira get knocked out cold like this before, and the guy's fought like 600 fights in the UFC up to this point, so it really does make the result of tonight all that more impressive. And for reasons I cannot and will not understand, during the post-fight interview, the UFC brought Paddy Pimblett into the cage to do a face-off, which I thought was really dumb when it happened. I thought this meant that Dana had already decided that Paddy was for sure next in line for the title, but thankfully he confirmed in the post-fight press conference that this isn't the case. And yeah, in this video I'm going to be talking about all of this as well as my thoughts of UFC 317 as a whole. I will say that even though the result of this fight was a first-round knockout where Charles was left laid out on the canvas with his eyes wide open, that doesn't mean that he didn't have moments of success. He was able to land some clean punches on Topuria that we've seen him drop guys with in the past. I think attacking Ilia's legs was also a really smart strategy, especially if he was able to drag the fight into the championship rounds, which obviously didn't end up happening, but it was still a smart move that I think Ilia's future opponent should also implement. And honestly, there was a moment during the leg lock attempt where I thought that he could pull off the submission, but Topuria ended up escaping. But Topuria is just inevitable at this stage in his career, and not long after the fight was reset, he was able to land a monstrous right hand that sent Charles to the Shadow Realm. The way that Oliveira was laying there with the lights on but nobody was home really reminds me of when Kamaru Usman got knocked out by Leon Edwards. It was kind of surreal watching Oliveira's body just go completely limp from the standing position, because even though we've seen him get finished via strikes before, he's never been truly knocked out. He got TKO'd by Donald Cerrone, but that started with a body shot. He got TKO'd by Cub Swanson, where he kind of just flailed around on the ground and quit, and then he got TKO'd by Max Holloway when he got punched in the throat and couldn't continue. But in this fight, dear lord, he got cracked with as clean of a right hand there is and immediately went to a place where time doesn't exist. That being said, I really get the feeling that Ilia and his team practiced punching at the same time Charles punched, and I think it was a smart game plan. For one, it helped to minimize the size and reach advantage that Oliveira had over him, and two, waiting for Charles to plant his feet and throw would let Ilia know where his head is going to be at that exact moment. Because although Charles does a lot of things really well, I wouldn't really say that slick head movement is one of his better qualities as a fighter. So in theory, when Ilia saw that Charles was going to commit to a punch, he could put faith in his chin and his power and his speed to land the bigger shot and knock him out, and in practice, that's exactly what happened. Also, Charles is such a forward pressure fighter, and giving up space against him oftentimes lets him build momentum in his fight, so Ilia punching at the same time didn't allow him to gain the space he needed to march Topuria down. And before I forget to say this, I genuinely believe that after knocking out Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and Charles Oliveira in back-to-back-to-back fights, this has to be the greatest 3-fight run that I've ever seen in the UFC. I could keep talking about the fight itself, but I really want to talk about Paddy being brought into the octagon to face off with Ilia. Look, I like Paddy a lot, and he's really made a believer out of me in his last few fights, but I don't know if it makes all that much sense to give him a title shot off of a win over 39-year-old Michael Chandler, who hasn't won a fight in over 3 years. It was a great performance and all, but if we are giving out title shots for beating Chandler, then what are we really doing here?
With Charles, I had a little bit difficult situation because I really like the guy, you know? He's a really great human being. You can hate him. You always see him surrounded by his family, friends, teammates. He's an amazing human being. But at the end, I was like, this is competition. I have to do my job, and that's it. But with Paddy, I'm really gonna enjoy kicking his ass.
Based on resume and merit, obviously Arman Tsarukyan is the true #1 contender. I mean, they literally had this guy as the backup fighter for this title fight where they even made him make weight, but then after the fight is over, they have Paddy enter the cage and announce him as the guy that's fighting for the title next. This is pretty strange, isn't it? Like, listen, I feel weird defending Arman Tsarukyan here after the last few videos that I made about him, but it's just bizarre to me that the UFC pulled this stunt on him. Not gonna lie, seeing all of this go down really makes me think that Dana made Arman cut weight as the backup fighter as a way to see if he can actually still make it down to 155 after the fiasco at UFC 311, which I still fully believe he pulled out because he couldn't make weight. I mean, just listen to what Dana said yesterday about Arman making weight for this event.
And Arman Tsarukyan, he weighed in as a backup fighter. He weighed in successfully at 155 pounds. So with that being said, is it safe to say that he will now fight for the title next?
No, it's a good step in the right direction. Let's put it that way.
It's a good start is a very telling response to describe a guy making weight who just pulled out of a title fight for supposedly getting injured. I don't know, I feel like there's just a mountain of evidence at this point that indicates that Arman is not in Dana's good graces after UFC 311, and it's not because he got injured. And you know what? I agree with Dana. I'm not the biggest fan of Tsarukyan these days myself, and I said in my previous video that I made about him that he needs to fight at least one guy before he's given a title shot again. So we have two guys in Paddy and Arman who I don't think deserve to fight for the title at this current moment, and who I think both need to bolster their case just a little bit more for the title shot to feel warranted. What do I think the UFC should do? Have them fight each other. I feel like this only makes sense. It's kind of crazy to me that the UFC is trying to fast track Paddy to a title shot after beating Chandler, and I personally feel like Arman versus Paddy as a title eliminator would be awesome, but what do I know?
The only person in the top 10 I can think of who's under 35 is Arman Tsarukyan. He's just a little posh boy who's had everything handed to him on a silver platter by his dad.
Do you think he actually got injured or no? Or what do you think happened?
No, he's a little bitch ass. That's what you are, Arman. Little boy.
God, I really wish the UFC kept a camera running on Arman as Paddy was in the cage with Ilia. I'm sure he was fucking seething. Dana really did this guy dirty this week, and frankly, I find it hilarious. It's wrong and it's petty, but it's hilarious. I know that Gaethje's been whining about getting the title shot next, and he's been threatening to retire if he doesn't get it, but that's just nonsense. Gaethje's claim for a title shot right now is so much worse than Arman's and Paddy's. Honestly, if you're asking me, I don't care what combination of Paddy or Arman or Justin you do for a title eliminator. I just think that all of them need one more win over one of those other guys before they get a title shot, and I really don't think that what I'm saying is all that out of line. And if the UFC does in fact move forward with Paddy Pimblett as Ilia's first title defense, of course I'll look forward to it because I really like both of those guys, but that won't change the fact that it's a really dumb move. Okay, we still got time in this video, so let's talk about the other fights that took place on UFC 317's main card. Alessandro Pantoja is just too good, and I think that he's just too far ahead of the competition right now. I haven't heard or seen a single person alive who thought that Kai Kara France had a chance in hell at beating Pantoja, and I think that we all knew how this fight was going to end heading into it. I think Kai's pretty good, but he's just not championship level, and I know that he's fighting at the smallest weight class already, but he's just too small at flyweight compared to the other guys in the division. He is tiny even amongst the tiny guys in the UFC, and his skills aren't enough to compensate for how small he is. And until the UFC starts up a men's atomweight division, which there is no way they'll ever do, he's never going to be a champion. Joshua Van is an absolute beast. I picked Royval heading into this fight. I thought that his experience at the top of the division would be too much for Van this early into his career, but clearly I was mistaken. This was just a 10 out of 10 fight, instant classic, literally one of the best 3-round fights that has ever happened in UFC history. The fact that Van is only 23 years old and doing this is so impressive, but even more so, the fact that he has only been training for 5 years is genuinely incredible. This guy is a fucking prodigy. He's obviously going to be getting the next crack at Pantoja for the title, and even though I don't think he's going to be quite ready to win the belt right now, I fully believe that this guy is going to be the flyweight champion before long. I don't like when UFC fans throw around the term future champion so casually, but when it comes to Van, I really feel like this guy is a future champ. Apparently, Renato Moicano can't afford to lose, and he for sure earned his loss against Beneil Dariush. I very much agree with DC's criticism about Moicano when he questioned his fight IQ in the second and third rounds, because I'm still having a hard time understanding why Moicano kept trying to force the wrestling after he beat up Beneil on the feet. I'm happy that Beneil was able to get back into the win column and all, but I'm baffled at Moicano's decision making. I'm also glad to see Peyton Talbot bounce back after suffering his first loss, and I really admire him for making it a point to show off his new wrestling skills, seeing as that's how he was exposed against Raoni Barcelos at UFC 311. I'm interested to see how Talbot continues to improve, and despite this being a great step in the right direction, I'll keep my expectations of him tempered in his next few fights. All in all, UFC 317 ended up being a pretty good card on the backs of Joshua Van and Ilia Topuria, and yes, the decision to have Paddy get into the octagon was stupid, but that doesn't at all change how impressive Topuria continues to look with each fight. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Ilia Topuria's performance and UFC 317 as a whole. Do you think that Paddy deserves the next title shot, and do you think Joshua Van can beat Pantoja if he were to fight him next? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Dana said, didn't he? It was Dana shot him down in that interview. I was like, whoa, that's heavy, that. You don't want the boss saying that about you. But because he got asked, didn't he, is Arman still number one? Right. And he was like, no, he's going to have to go back to the drawing board. Yeah. He basically said that like doctors come out at Header, the best masseuse in the PI, come out and they never said to him, you can't fight. he decided he's not going to fight. So basically, Armin, you shit your pants. Know what I mean? That's what you did. You farted and followed through and had shit coming down your leg. So that's basically what happened.
Yeah, as a fan, that pullout fucking sucked for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I was pissed when I saw that.